So I have been on a spiritual path for a long, long time, and my main love for spirituality was non-duality and the teachings of the mind and the teachings of emotions and our fundamental true nature. So for many, many years I've practiced meditation and I've practiced focused self-inquiry, and at some point I was actually also sharing these teachings with my students, and I just felt like I had sort of come to a plateau where I felt that I had these incredible awakening experiences of my fundamental nature, really being able to see myself as pure awareness, pure perception, pure consciousness. Yet somehow I began to notice that my conditioning, our cultural conditioning, and the conditioned mind and the belief systems that were sort of embedded in my system were still very present. Specifically from the in the emotional aspect, because it was very easy for me to see through my thoughts, yet the triggers in my emotions and actually the reactivity was very much present. And I contemplated quite a bit, and at one point I had a friend who told me about ayahuasca, actually, well, many years ago. And I had also tried ayahuasca, and I was able to see this incredible I noticed this incredible quality of ayahuasca where there was a lot of external ideas of dimensional realities, which was helpful to see that to really recognize that I wasn't just this body, that I was energy. Yet when I talked to this friend, he talked about the direct experience, and I was very intrigued when I heard that, and I wanted to really be incredibly present for myself and for my students, and I wanted to see if I can go into Iboga and or Iboga experience and notice why are these triggers still here. And at that point I'd done extensive research about Iboga. So I came about, by doing research, I came about IbogaQuest and met Barry, or called him and talked to him, and I immediately felt that this would be a place for me because he is a Dharma brother, and he has been doing meditation practices and awareness practices for a long time, and that is really my love. So I arrived here in Switzerland in 2014. That was my motivation, to know thyself. Interestingly enough, I had studied very intensively regarding people's pasts, and their intimacy issues began usually with not clearing things with their image makers, like their family, their brothers, their sisters, their mother, their father. And of course, there was, even though I came with no expectations, I still had these underlying expectations because I came to ask more of the deeper spiritual questions. But instead, I mean, one of the first visions that I remember was that I was standing in front of this huge mountain, or top of this huge mountain, with this amazing meadow, and all of a sudden there was this fire, and I was just burned to the ground. And that was my very first image. And I thought to myself, this would be interesting. And so the incredible thing was that I actually really went back to my past. Like when I was a young woman, I saw sort of where my conditioning began, the religious connotations through which I grew up. and where is this entire identity began. What I was told as a child, little things like there's always something, for example, the whole connotation of God, there's always something outside of self, and the separatist idea of that, and just watching, I mean, I had all these visions of childhood, of watching my grandmother, the role of the feminine, all these things that were like, I did not have any idea that it actually affected me on a cellular level. And so my first experience, I've done it twice, and so my first experience of Iboga was so interesting because it was just like an iPad within which I saw my past, and it would come up and it would show me where the actual lack began in myself, and then now it's done. Now that it's seen, it's done, clear, next, boom. And it was pictures after pictures after pictures of clear seeing of not only that that was my own condition, but it was human condition, and that it was much bigger than myself, the suffering, human suffering, and my own suffering of feeling alone or not feeling connected, and the very nature of myself and how connected I am, and I am that, I am everything, and simultaneously the aspect of nothingness. It was very clearly seen, but not before sort of going back into my history and my childhood, and so many things that I did not know that actually hurt, that I just sort of did not go into the body, did not feel into the body, and just passed through, and created this sophisticated mechanism. I was able to see how I created this sophisticated mechanism, this persona of myself, and to be looking good and being okay, and also saw how I spiritually bypassed many things, but by being identified with spirituality and actually having that spiritual identity, that was enormous for me. I remember having extreme joy and an extreme sadness simultaneously, because I then began to notice the people around me also have that, and that it has not been seen. So I saw very clearly that seeing is freeing, but seeing from the place of awareness is freeing. Not becoming aware of something, because that was definitely present, but from the place of awareness as a open intelligence, your natural true self, your spacious awareness that actually sees into no separation. So all of these things that I was seeing were about me being this isolated being, and these things happened to me. And then when I was seeing from this space of awareness, I saw that they were just picture frames, not really happening per se to me, that they were just happening. And that I had taken it from the place of deepest identity, had taken them personally and experienced them to be this sort of a victim to it, although that wasn't at all the case. That those experiences had I'd seen them then, which I did in the Iboga, create incredible amount of wisdom in ourselves to see through what is actually being shown, rather than what we see from this wall of perception and identity. So it just deepened my wisdom and my knowledge of things are not always the way that they seem, and I am not what I think I am, which was rather conceptual before that, but actually now had become wisdom of the heart, if I can call it that. Direct experience is exactly what I got. I mean, direct experience with the workings of my own psyche, but deeply seeing into my own psyche and knowing thyself, I saw the human condition in others in that way. And it brought me to my knees with humbleness and humility. I had a 36-hour journey, and it wasn't difficult at all. I did not have any difficulties moving through things. I also recognized the importance of breath to come to the present moment. Anytime I saw that my mind was going into some sort of entertainment or something that wasn't necessarily needed, and if I took a deep breath and if I just relaxed, it all shifted rather quickly and went deeper into the work that I am here to do. And there were so many incredible benefits. And an interesting thing also that happened was that I was able to, I'd researched extensively, but I never knew that you can encounter deceased ancestors. Well, my father passed away many years ago. I was a very young woman when he passed away in my 20s, and so I had a wonderful encounter with my father, which was absolutely unexpected. And the culture that I come from, the role of a father has always been a role of a father. Although he was a wonderful man, there was never any emotional availability there. So I noticed in the way that he communicated with me was very much coming from the place of presence and depth, and it wasn't very long. He came running, he held me, and I realized how important it is to have that holding, that love of a father for a young girl, and that noticing of being completely embraced felt like my own masculine quality that was sort of missing, and due to that I would seek for love outside myself, and although I had worked a lot on that and clearly seen some of those patterns before, just my father being so present and loving with me, it just felt like all of that need to seek externally for love and affection dissolved. And the noticing of that was just phenomenal. Yet, my mother kept coming, and I kept wanting to reach out to her, and there was this block there. And I beautifully could see that the work needed to be actually done here and not in the ceremony. I mean, I was able to see it, and I wondered what was that going to look like. And literally within the 2 months after my first Iboga ceremony, my mother, unfortunately, she had a stroke, and I had left where she lived with my brother possibly 30 years ago. And I went back, although I've of course seen her twice or 3 times a year, I actually left my practice, left my home, left my friends, and went to take care of her. And it just seemed like the Iboga ceremony did not end for that 3 years where I helped her heal and revive, and so many things arose, triggers arose between us, her sadness about me leaving home, but much work was actually done in the living, yet I never forgot the clarity that I had through Iboga, that this is it, this is where the buck stops, so to speak. If you work through this, and if you work through opening to love, and seeing that my mother loved and loves me in her own way, rather than my expectations of how she loved me, and love her anyway and open anyway, although she was rather difficult. And I understand she was very ill, and I was helping her to heal, and so we went through all of those dynamics, and ultimately to actually experience her absolute unconditional love for me my whole life, which I never actually was able to see. But thanks to Iboga, I was able to actually work through that innocent misperception. But I just wanted to say that so much was did not at all came off as a story running in my head, but clarity of direct experience with how, when we clear these misperceptions and misconceptions and this separation from life, that is when you really begin to see and notice the silent nature of self and the clear nature of self, the state of your own being as love, the very nature of wholeness that we already are, and the fundamental nature of this stability that you can only find here within yourself.